that your week is going well. I hope that you guys was able to take a look at our last week's lunch and learn to, try to determine if that is going to be um, a good, a good method for you when it comes to, really saving the cost in your taxes when it comes to your business structure. So that is like the basic thing that we are trying to show you, trying to teach you, trying to offer you to see, is it time for you to become an S-Corp? Like, could this be the time? After, you have done your taxes, you have, seen what kind of tax bill you're looking at. So now is the time to say, is it time for me to become an S-Corp? Should I take this S-Corp election? All right, so I'm operating from a couple different computers today, which I don't know if that's good or bad. So bear with me. And so in today's well, first I want to welcome you. And in today's Lunch and Learn, I'm so excited to be with you yet again, because first of all, this is one of the things that I love to do, which is to just teach about how we as entrepreneurs can really save, because we know on this journey, you're not going to have the answers to everything. There are different hats, and there are several different hats that you have to wear as an entrepreneur. Sometimes you have to be the marketer. Sometimes you have to be the bookkeeper. Sometimes you have to be the salesperson. And with all of these hats that we have to wear, if we are able to tap into the information that we really need to move us forward, then yes, I want to be able to supply that if I have the information for you. And lucky for you, I do, because I absolutely love the S-Corp. I love how it's a really, really good method for you to save on your taxes. However, there is definitely certain regulations and tools that we have to keep in mind. All right. So we are going to jump in. All right. So I want to welcome you again to today's Lunch and Learn. We are talking about the hidden cost of operating an S-Corp, because we know a lot of people, they talk about S-Corp, this is the thing, you need to do this. However, a lot of people don't share the entire story. They're not giving you those hidden costs when you have to have the other things that are needed when you are operating as an S-Corp. Everyone talks about how this is a great strategy that is really able to help you save taxes. While that is not wrong, it's just half of the story, right? So there are costs that are definitely tied into staying compliant when it comes to that, to the payroll filings, the things that you need to have in place to stay audit ready. Because if you're not, these things will definitely sneak up on you. So today we are going to break down some of the costs that you will run into in your business as you look into being an S-Corp, or if you already are an S-Corp, okay? So, all right. So I want to remind you guys before we move forward that we are gearing up for our boot camp that is coming up in the month of May. This is going to be a 2-day virtual workshop. It's going to be very hands-on. It's going to be so hands-on that we are only taking 10 business owners. All right. So if you are a business owner and you're saying, hey, TK, I really think I need to take this S-Corp election, then we are going to dive deeper into everything that you need to prepare yourself, to prepare your business to operate and maintain a successful S-Corp, so that you're doing everything in compliant when it comes to the payroll, when it comes to the tax filings, when it comes to paying yourself, all of that good stuff. You're going to have everything that you need in order to walk from our boot camp as an S-Corp owner. All right. So again, we are only taking 10 business owners. If you go to one of our profiles, you should see the link where you are able to get more information about the boot camp and go ahead and sign up if you are ready to do so. All right. So first of all, let's recap from our last session. Okay, so we talked about an S-Corp. It is a special tax status. It is not a tax. It is not a business entity, but yet it is a tax status. So when you take this tax status, you're basically telling the IRS, you're saying, hey, I want to be taxed as an S-Corp. All right. Because right now, if you are operating as an LLC, then you should know that all of your profits are being taxed 15.3%. Yes. So everything that you are bringing in from that net income, it is being taxed 15.3%. And so what the S-Corp election does is you are now able to take those net profits and you're able to split them. You're able to split them into a salary, and then everything after that you are able to take as a distribution, right? And so that is the whole goal of being an S-Corp. That is the entire goal of taking the S-Corp election, to be able to split these net profits so that you are able to reduce your taxes, right? When you do that, you reduce that self-employment taxes and you are saving. Okay. So now there are rules and regulations to be able to qualify and maintain the S-Corp. All right. So if you need to go back and look at last week's Lunch and Learn, it is posted within the group. It is also posted on YouTube if you are following us on there as well. Okay. So, again, the S-Corp election, it is not a type of thing that where you can kind of like, just set it and forget it. It is not like that. There are a lot of things that you have to consider before actually taking the S-Corp election to make sure that it works out for you, to make sure that it's beneficial for you where you are right now within your budget. Okay. So it's kind of like when you're buying a luxury car. That was one of the things that my husband told me when I wanted a luxury car. He was like, now, if you get this luxury car, it's going to be nice, but there are things that you have to be able to maintain it so that it continues to run properly. And it doesn't cost the same as, when you had a car that was not considered a luxury car. The prices for you to maintain this new car is going to be more expensive because you are getting a better luxury out of it. And so same thing with the S-Corp. Like, you have to remind yourself that this is not a typical LLC. You're taking this S-Corp election to help save you in taxes. Yes, but there is a higher level of regulation. There is a higher level of things that you must maintain. There's a higher level of penalties if you do not maintain these things. So we have to take those into consideration as well. All right. So let's dive in. What are some of the hidden costs? First, you have payroll. Okay. If you are an S-Corp owner, you are required to have yourself on a reasonable salary. And there are a lot of emphasis on reasonable. Okay. And this is something that we are going to jump in on our next week's session. But this means that you have to set up a payroll system and run it on the regular basis. You cannot start payroll for a couple of months and then stop payroll and then be like, oh, well, I need to pay myself and then start payroll again. That is not how it works. You have to have a consistent payroll that you are running on the regular basis. Even if you are a one woman or a one man show, there are no exceptions to this. You have to have yourself on payroll. So that means that you have to have a payroll software or a payroll provider. Okay. Because when you're doing payroll, you also are going to run into quarterly payroll taxes. And if you're not paying these taxes, there is a possibility of a penalty if you don't do it the correct way. All right. So a lot of entrepreneurs, they do not really count up the cost when it comes to operating as an S-Corp owner, and they may skip the payroll step, right? So if they're not taking any payroll, that means that they're taking all of their net income as distributions, and there are no payroll taxes paid out on this amount. And so that is the problem. That is a red flag for the IRS. So you want to make sure that you are running your payroll consistently, and that you consider the cost to have a payroll software or a provider fees. If not, that is going to be a problem. And you want to make sure that you are paying those payroll taxes. Okay. So the next thing that we have is the S-Corp filing. We touched a little bit on this last week. When you are an LLC, or when you are a sole proprietor, your taxes will go alongside your personal taxes. But when you're taking the S-Corp tax filing and you're telling the IRS, hey, I want to be taxed as an S-Corp, then you must know that you're not going to use that basic Schedule C anymore that goes with your personal taxes. You're going to use a totally different business tax return, and you're going to receive a K-1, and that K-1 is going to be used on your personal taxes. So you're going to have your personal taxes, and then you're going to have a separate business tax. Okay. And so you have to consider the tax filing fees for this as well. Now, some of them, I have never seen an S-Corp tax filing at $500. Like if you have someone filing an S-Corp tax at $500, then you probably need to make sure, number one, that they are legit. And then number two, that everything is good, because $500 is really, really cheap nowadays for an S-Corp tax filing. But I have seen them more about $800 to about $2,500 maybe. And so it really depends on your area and the tax professional that you are using. For our clients, for our bookkeeping clients, they do receive a discount on those S-Corp taxes, because, if we're doing their S-Corp taxes, then we're probably doing their personal taxes. And then we also handle their bookkeeping as well. So we do offer discounts when things are bundled, when we're able to bundle like that. But you can expect for about $800 to about $2,500 for S-Corp tax filings. So take that into consideration as a end of the year fee that you would have to pay as well. All right. And so then we also have bookkeeping. And we know that bookkeeping is a very important part when it comes to operating and running your S-Corp. Because the IRS, they expect for your books to be on point, right? You cannot have messy books if you're operating as an S-Corp. They want your books to be accurate and very clear, because you have to separate that payroll salary from your distributions. All right. And trust me, if you don't keep them clean, you'll spend even more time trying to fix everything. So whether you do it monthly, quarterly, quarterly bookkeeping, you want to make sure that you are compliant. All right. Because you do want to track the salary, the distributions. You want to make sure that you're tracking those payroll taxes. You want to have everything very, very organized. So bookkeeping is something that you do not want to skip out on. All right. And so bookkeeping costs for S-Corps, that could vary as well. Within my company, we do have a S-Corp bookkeeping package just for S-Corps, because we know that operating an S-Corp looks a lot different from operating just an LLC. And so we have an S-Corp bookkeeping package that we do offer to our clients. So yes, so you want to make sure that you have bookkeeping, and that is not something you want to DIY. All right. You don't want to do that on your own. Like, you definitely want to have a professional at least looking over your numbers on the quarterly basis, if you're not able to hire someone to have them, look over it consistently. All right. So then that brings us to the state fees and annual filings. So each state, they have their own type of regulations. For example, Georgia, for S-Corp, we have to file the 600S. and pay a $125 annual report fee. So these fees can, they are pretty small, but everything will add up, and you need to make sure that it is in line with your budget and that it makes sense for you. All right. So now these fees can differ from state to state, but you have to consider if you have any state fees or a annual filing as an S-Corp owner. All right. So then something else that I like to throw in is definitely tax planning. Now, tax planning can be either on the smaller level or it could be on a larger level. Okay. So within our firm, again, we do offer tax planning. It is a light tax planning that we offer on a quarterly basis. But tax planning is one of the things that is crucial if you are operating an S-Corp, because you don't want to underpay taxes, you don't want to misuse your distributions, and you don't want to end up with a surprise tax bill at the end of the year either, right? So that's why most S-Corp owners that's why we do really push for the tax planning for our S-Corp owners, because you want to stay on top of the taxes on the quarterly basis. All right. Like, you don't want to overlook that. That is something that is very important. And so here are some of the potential penalties that people can incur. These are some of the fees that we have seen within our company with some of S-Corp owners that came over to our company when they do not file their S-Corp return on time, right? So if they're missing their tax date, or if they are skipping out on filing their taxes and they don't have like an extension in, then that penalty can be up to $220 per shareholder per month. That is a healthy fee, right? So you want to make sure that you're filing those S-Corp returns on time. If they are late in payroll tax deposits, that's the 941 and the 940. There's the penalty for that too. It's 2% up to 15% on the unpaid tax amount. So you don't want to skip any payroll tax deposits. And so that's why I was saying that you have to have, you want to keep a payroll service consistently. That is not something you want to miss, skip over, or cancel and then start back, because those tax due dates, those tax reports, the payroll taxes, is something totally different, and that can get really, really messy if you're stopping and starting your payroll. All right. So another big one is failure to pay reasonable salary. Remember, the word reasonable is a lot of emphasis on that. Because if you're not paying yourself a reasonable salary, the IRS can come back and reclassify wages, meaning that you could have to go back and pay payroll taxes and interest and penalties on top of those distributions that were not classified correctly. So you want to make sure that you are having to pay yourself a reasonable salary. And again, like, we're going to jump into what a reasonable salary is on our next week's Lunch and Learn. Okay. So another thing is missing state annual report filings. Again, there are a lot of late fees with this. You just want to make sure that you are in good standing and that that you have everything filed according to your state regulations. All right. So again, this is something that you really don't have to maintain on your own. All right. When you are connecting with a good bookkeeper or a good accountant that knows the ins and outs of how an S-Corp is operating, then that person I don't know about them, but for us, like, we take care of all of this for you. All right. We're looking out for your annual filings, making sure your reasonable salary is correct, making sure those payroll taxes are filed at the correct time, and there are no missed filings. All right. And then making sure that those S-Corp returns are done by the due date, because they don't have the same due date as personal taxes. So we take care of all of that in-house under our company. So if you are looking for someone, you want to make sure that they are doing the same when it comes to the rules and the regulations of running an S-Corp. Okay. So guys, listen, the truth is this: is that there are a lot of costs when it comes into operating the S-Corp. And another truth is that they're not really hidden operations. They're not really hidden costs. There are, I mean, the costs are just not brought to the forefront a lot. And so you have to kind of consider these things before jumping all the way in to being an S-Corp. All right. So the fees that you're going to see are definitely going to come from the payroll setup, the filings, the bookkeeping, the tax preparation, and being compliant. And those fees can range from about $2,000 to $4,000 a year. But if you are operating and you are profiting about 75 plus K, if you are profiting that a year, you could still be saving $8,000 to $15,000 in taxes annually. So it would still work out for you depending on the amount that you are profiting within your business. All right. So you just have to know the cost, run it right, and be able to save. All right. This is how you save smartly, by using the S-Corp tax election. All right. So if you have any questions, you can definitely put them in the messages below. You can definitely add them to the messages below, and I will be sure to get back with you and write you back. Or you can either send us an email at hello@tkbarlow.com. Okay. And before you leave, I want to also remind you of the boot camp that I mentioned earlier. This boot camp is going to bring you clarity, guys. You're going to understand exactly how the S-Corp works. For any person that is in the wellness industry. You're going to have the confidence to know how to pay your stuff the right way and stay out of IRS trouble. You're going to know the step-by-step action plan. You're going to walk away with your S-Corp setup or optimized. You're going to have the tools, the templates, the checklists, the calculators, the payroll guides, everything that you need to be successful when it comes to operating and regulating your S-Corp. And most importantly, you're going to have the tax savings, right? You're going to know how to maximize your profits and keep more of your earned hard money. All right. So the registration is open today. I will drop a link below that you are able to get more information about that. And remember to join us next Wednesday at noon for our next what am I trying to say? For our next lunch and learn, that it's going to be next week. So our next topic is going to be the reasonable salary. What does that look like? What is a reasonable salary? So I know I get a lot of questions about that. And so we're going to address that on next Wednesday. So if you have any questions, please post them in the message box below. And in the meantime, cheers to your success. And I will see you soon. Bye-bye.